Putin responded to Trump by showing that he is not really capable of anything. We'll talk about that too. How is Trump going to stop this? Because the world is fed up. We're discussing it right now. With us is Olga Romanova, head of the Russia Behind Bars Foundation. Olga, hello. Good to see you. Thank you for taking the time on such historically important days. Donald Trump's inauguration has raised huge sums of money and grandiose representatives of the world. Trump says you'll have fun watching TV and he'll get things done at historic speed. Although no one asked much, Trump is still preparing a conversation with him. Putin congratulated Trump on taking office at a meeting of the Russian Security Council and said the Kremlin sees the new president's desire to resume contacts with Russia that were interrupted by the previous administration. Moscow is open for dialogue with the U.S. administration on the conflict. Putin called the war bloody and said the goal was not a short-term truce, but a long-term peace based on respect for the interests of all peoples in the region. So much lying and unpreparedness here. All of a sudden, he needed long-term peace. What Putin really needs is a short-term truce to break and renew forces. What does this suck-up or Putin's new assessment of reality say? Maybe he's scared? Putin contradicts himself in previous statements. He wasn't going to call, write, or meet with Trump at first. Now he has a different position, and both Putin and Trump realize that they will have to meet because the word situation also applies to war. It will have to be solved, and you can't do it without a mandatory step. The mandatory step is first a ceasefire. Putin disagrees. Didn't agree to ceasefire, halt the front, and bomb Ukrainian cities. A ceasefire is simply stopping firing. Historically speaking, ceasefires are always broken. A ceasefire usually lasts 10 to 14 days. If at that point talk of a ceasefire begins, then it comes into play and the signing of agreements like the Minsk agreements, which have not worked and will not work now, regardless of the format, Qatari, Omani, Turkish. The truce is likely to be signed in Qatar. Let's see, Swiss truce, I don't know what year. Yes, it's important to provide your sites for now, Olga. How do you stop the fire when Putin has violated it 198 times in the first 8 years of the war? In any case, whatever the new situation is called, it will be short-lived, and it will all depend on Trump and the Europeans, who are now showing a disconnect from America. That's understandable, but who is Trump? Who is Trump, the flamboyant president of the most powerful country? Trump's choice is a choice of a new reality that the whole world has probably come to. Everyone is talking about the China factor, 5G, or whatever. The world is tired of so many things, and Trump has become a spokesman for that fatigue. The world was tired of the old politics, and the new expressed itself in the election of a 78-year-old president. There's no others anyway. Trump will try to make peace between Ukraine and Russia without caring about the shape of it. Trump, unfortunately, is a lot like Putin, not only with his statement about Greenland and Canada, but also in that he has long considered the Nobel for Peace to be his. Against the backdrop of people who have recently won Nobel Peace Prizes, he doesn't need one. He wants to become the ruler of the world, to go down in history as a peacemaker. The Nobel Prize is not important to him. The main thing is to stop the war, and for that, he is ready to do anything. Negotiations with Putin do not interest him. He is not interested, unlike us and our colleagues from RBC Ukraine. According to their sources, freezing the war on the current front line. The second point is NATO, which worries Putin, and our membership there is not so important. Western media reminded that Trump in 2016-2017 said that whether Ukraine joins or not is irrelevant. If they join, fine. If they don't join, that's fine. The NATO issue on the RBC plan is postponed, but not forgotten, just postponed. Olga, how realistic are these items in the plan for fulfillment or vice versa? On the current collision line, we're not happy with it. Perhaps temporarily if there is no way out, but there is the Kursk factor. 2025 will be very turbulent. Things will change fast, talk of Ukraine joining NATO, the EU, and becoming a nuclear power. We will discuss it vividly, including the exchange of territories. It will be, because everything is a variation, we agreed not to call the coming peace, but a variation of the pause in hostilities. The main difference is Trump's politics and Europe's politics. Although Europe has many politicians, it is now united against Trump. Europe has become a bit wary, kind of hornswoggled. Visiting Europe is like a bull with horns forward looking at Trump. This will lead to a confrontation because Europe is suddenly wobbly in 2024. We very much sympathize with Ukraine, but the situation with weapons is complicated. Everything will change now because details are important for Europe. Putin is far from America, and it's important to Trump that he stop threatening nuclear weapons. At the end of 2024, Europe suddenly realized that Putin is very close. Even without counting his nukes, Putin is still close. Lithuania said it would send its soldiers to Ukraine if necessary. Lithuania understands everything. I live half in Vilnius, half in Berlin. The mood is different because Lithuania feels constrained. Vilnius is 30 kilometers from Minsk. That's very close. The mood in Estonia and Latvia is also tense. There are many Russians there.
настроение и в Эстонии, в Латвии очень много русских там.
Nevertheless, Poland and even Germany have begun to realize that Putin is too close.
И даже, в общем, собственно, и в Германии начали понимать, что Путин слишком близко.
With nuclear and non-nuclear weapons, all hope now lies with Ukraine. It is now clear that Ukraine is saving Europe from Putin. Unlike Trump, who is in fact, he doesn't care about Ukraine. The relations are different, and I am convinced that America and European countries will have different positions on the issue of Ukraine's accession to NATO. It is already visible. Zelensky said that while there used to be 7 opponents of joining NATO, there are now 4: the States, Germany, Hungary, and Slovakia. There are opponents of our entry and supporters of Putin in Europe. But Europe is becoming more autonomous, we see. Trump says that for Europe, Russia is close, and it realizes that, but for the U.S., there's an ocean between them. If the first round of talks with Trump doesn't work, Putin will renege on the terms, go for conflict despite claims of willingness to communicate, because we know he's lying about everything. If Putin continues to lie, Trump will, as you say, quickly impose increased sanctions or take other measures. By the way, about the 4 countries against Ukraine joining NATO, I think Germany will soon be in favor when the chancellor changes. The shift is already at the end of February. I hope this one doesn't have much of a chance. If there's a MERS, Germany will definitely be in favor because it's the largest country in Europe, and that's important. In terms of sanctions and negotiations, we know there is a public side. This is only a small part of the iceberg. There have been leaks since last fall that the negotiations are actually about other terms. I mean Putin, to paraphrase so it's not obscene. In words, he is Leo Tolstoy, but indeed he is simple. In fact, the negotiations are under different conditions. Given the fall leaks, there are actually no hard conditions on Russia's part. Negotiations are now underway between the Russians and Ukrainians in Qatar. We don't know who. These people are. Negotiations are in Qatar. These are stories from last week. Israel, Hamas, hostages and truce talks were going on simultaneously in Qatar. Negotiations are underway, and what's on the surface is just white noise testing the ground. It is not for nothing that Putin states contradictory things. He doesn't care what the voters think. He is the king, and he cares what world leaders, governments, analysts, etc. think. He reports this to probe European soil. He can't call Macron or Scholz or Trump and say, here's what I propose. He can probe. Putin is not interested in voter opinion, but he is interested in the public opinion center that draws the percentages. It's telling. We know everything is made up by the all-state center. 51% of Russians don't believe Trump can end the war in Ukraine in 6 months. Public opinion in Russia has long been disregarded because of the totalitarian repressive regime. These numbers are being drawn for Putin. Why did they draw that percentage? It's an indicator to then say that they didn't get their hopes up for Trump, and that it's his fault for the failures. We've been in favor of negotiation since we were kids. This is traditional, starting with Obama, who caused problems, as did Biden. Every U.S. president has traditionally dreamed of taking over parts of Russia, including its riches, despite the fact that 87% of the territory is uninhabitable due to climate.
И вот это все взвалить на себя, захватить вот это все богатство, 87% территории Российской Федерации непригодны для проживания, ну просто по климатическим условиям и по всему остальному.
Dreams of taking over those backyard closets, and so on. America's fault for dreaming of grabbing this wealth. There is no hope for Trump, only contempt and other things. Everyone realizes that everything works according to the old Soviet joke. In Russia, too, there is freedom of speech, and anyone can go to Red Square and say, Trump is a fool. That's still in effect, but also asked Russians not just about Trump, but about the war in general. The Institute for Social and Political Studies brought attention to this issue. Half of Russians admitted war worsened their lives. The war unleashed by Putin has had a negative impact on the lives of 47.6% of Russians. Respondents' health deteriorated and costs increased. Relatives, friends were killed or wounded in the SWO, or what we will call the war. There are problems, but no action, and these numbers suggest that fatigue is inevitable. Last week, there were statistics on drug consumption in Russia. Antidepressants at 1.5 times the record. Antidepressants. I was shown a receipt from Azbuka Vakusa in Moscow. A loaf of bread, 1,000 rubles. I see butter sold in plastic containers closed. In Novosibirsk, the government announced social assistance. Novosibirsk residents no longer need to save up for butter. The word save up for butter is to stop the rise in inflation, which in butter was 42%. People are quickly recruited to go to war, even though they had no intention of leaving. Young and prosperous, because of which there is serious competition, and military enlistment offices are trying to stem the flow. Not because the war is necessary, but because people want to get 5 million in time, thinking the war will end at the front. It's a certainty that Trump will come in and clean up the mess. Trump came in, and now people want to get to the front, get 5 million, and come back when the war is over. Yeah, if you survive, you don't end up in a hole, and your own people don't kill you. 5 million, but you don't want to go to war. The family also says, he's got it, that's it, the war's over. It's a trend that gives Putin carte blanche not to introduce mobilization. The socioeconomic explosion is kind of there, but it's also not. There is no explosion yet, and there won't be one. If there is one, it will be far right, although the division into right and left is no longer relevant in Russia or in the world.
Деление на правых и левых сохранялось бы в России, а там ничего этого не сохраняется, да, ну, собственно, и во всем мире не сохранится.
It's Russia that needs, it's looking for a new Prigozhin. She misses the old Prigozhin. If there's an explosion, it's a Prigozhin scheme. It will be a movement, as Putin likes to say. Neither we nor Putin will like it, but if it's a protesting anti-liberal populist like Trump, only of the people, then maybe. The country is waiting for something like Stepan Razin and Pugachev in one person. I think it's going to be some kind of combat officer. He will have the men and the remaining equipment. It will be a popular commander, unhappy with the end of the war. Discontent will be caused by cheating on payments when soldiers return from the front, and no one has paid them what they were promised. The Stalinist tradition with veterans over 101 kilometers is sure to return. There's going to be resentment there, especially beyond 101 kilometers because of the commuters. A new leader will grow out of this environment. A serviceman who beat up fellow soldiers was detained in Tuva. It happened in military Unit 55115 in Kizel, where soldiers of the 55th Motorized Rifle Brigade serve. The battered men of the assault unit, who were scheduled to be returned to the front, have returned back. This trend is telling. They are at war with the wrong people, and dominance is shown through threats. This will come back in full force, violence and threats as a way to dominate, not for pleasure. That's what it's going to be like. The trend is clearly a successful one. The museum director has been arrested for the banner, "Putin is a war criminal." He's been accused of war fakery. Apparently, the truth is too annoying. When that banner appears on the wall of the Hague Tribunal, not just the arrest warrant, it's bound to happen. We won't see Putin there. We'll see other people. We'll see for sure in Lvova Belova. We'll see everyone on warrant, everyone not on warrant. The youth will be there, and Putin will probably disappear. We'll probably lose Putin, and 20 years from now, we'll find his remains by DNA under the rubble. Like it was with Bormann, with Mueller. The alpha male who likes to ride half-naked on horses doesn't sink, but he doesn't swim either. Putin for the third year refused baptismal bathing. What's wrong, Olga? Is she afraid to show her body, or is her health no longer good? No, he doesn't have enough Shoigu. Volodin is there. You can have him. He doesn't mind. He doesn't mind, but Putin likes it hot. Putin, after all, likes Oriental types and brunettes, while Volodin is a bit soft. Maybe there's something wrong with your health? At 73, it's not good to be naked, but despite everything, he's still alive, even though he rubs mummies on his knees.
Какие-то коленцы исполняет, да, он все-таки, я понимаю, что он там натирает колени лошадиной силой с мумием там и так далее, но тем не менее, пока, к сожалению, живчик.
You'll never show your face again.
Ну, а с другой стороны, девки ему и так дают, Господи.
Unfortunately, it's either money or I don't know what.
Ну, раз у него есть маленькие дети, значит, по-прежнему Кабаева согласна.
Olga, yes. What are we dealing with? Horror. Good thing we're far away, but they're getting closer. What do you think Xi Jinping is pursuing in anticipation of the inauguration and meeting with Trump? It is unlikely that he is pursuing unquestioning support for Putin. Although Xi has been silent for months, he will still meet with Trump. He should go to Russia. We forget his visit is due soon. Xi has already talked to Trump on the phone. China is still Trump's #1 priority. Not Russia, not Ukraine, not Canada, not Greenland, but China. At first, he was an enemy of China. But the world may become bipolar, and China is considering as a full-fledged pole. There's a joke that's not a joke at all. A Russian journalist misspoke, and I loved it. He said Donald Musk, President of the United States. And I thought, what a great disclaimer. Donald Musk. By the way, more than half of Tesla is made in China. There's also TikTok and many other things related to China, not Russia. Donald Musk should talk to Xi and work out his checks and balances. There is no place for Russia in this elaboration. It will not participate in the U.S.-China alliance, anti-alliance.
Ни в какой проработке условий вот этого самого американо-китайского союза, антисоюза.
Marriage relations are very complicated here.
Сложные брачные отношения.
There will, of course, mention Russia in that marriage pact or non-aggression pact, often the same thing, both in and out of life. And in the geopolitical space, Russia will be mentioned there. Oh, those two bears are going to share it. No one will ask Putin. After all, Russia itself shared it. Russia used to be called a gasoline station and reproached by liberals for its dependence on the West, but now it has become a raw materials appendage of the East. I'm sorry, what's wrong? The great imperialist has clearly made a mistake. Only his cheap resources are being used now. What you fought for, you got what you got, in every sense, including the ones with a V. Olga, thank you so much. We'll have a lot to talk about. There won't be peace in 24 hours, but we'll be watching for 100 edicts and possible solutions. Until we meet again, take care.
До свидания, всего хорошего.
Thank you for your comments and stance. Olga Romanova, head of the Russia Behind Bars Foundation. Thank you for spending this time with us. Leave comments. I'm sure you have something to add. Take care. Have faith in WSU. See you and we will win.